Okay, November 2013. Let's start with our usual books to screen. In case you needed yet another adaptation of Great Expectations, you can find that beginning November 8th. With, huh? That is Rafe Fiennes there. Helena Bonham Carter as Miss Havisham. Yep. So buy your tickets now. 2005 Prince Award winner How I Live Now, based upon the novel by Meg Rosoff, opens November 8th. Limited, so in other words, will not play here. But also on November 8th, one that we should all look forward to is The Book Thief, based upon the novel by Marcus Zuzak. Great book. And several of y'all, have any of y'all not read it? Y'all haven't read it? Were y'all not in my book club at that point in time? No.
I wasn't either. I read it
Okay.
on my own.
All right. So,
Hopefully I thought it was
great book.
fabulous.
Okay. The Motel Life, based upon the novel by Willie Vlaughton. I know absolutely nothing about this book, but it's coming out on November 8th as well, and starring Chris Christopherson. So, and then finally, the one that you're all waiting for, Catching Fire, opens November 22nd. Buy your tickets now. Okay. Our regular book meme of the month, and I hope that y'all can get this. What happens when I read a book? Reading. Eyes continue to follow every word in the book, but my mind wanders off into strange places. Hold on, I have no idea what is going on in the book. I have to reread everything. Does that ever happen? The worst is when it's audio, and I have to go back to the beginning of the track.
Because you have no idea. It's not like, okay, I can go back a couple pages.
Right.
You have no idea.
And if it's those ones that have like 15-minute long tracks, that's the worst. I like the ones that every 3 minutes. So. Okay. Yeah. Now, for the next part, and my apologies, but we did the Bucket Books thing on horror last week, and I did not come across this feature until after the fact, but it was just too good to pass up. Reddit recently asked their users, what's the best horror story you can come up with in 2 sentences? And these are some that were just fantastic. Okay? So, again, my apologies. But first off, I began tucking him in the bed, and he tells me, Daddy, check for monsters under my bed. I look underneath for his amusement and see him, another him, under the bed, staring back at me, quivering and whispering, Daddy, there's somebody on my bed. The doctors told the amputee he might experience a phantom limb from time to time. Nobody prepared him for the moments, though, when he felt cold fingers brush across his phantom hand. I can't move, breathe, speak, or hear, and it's so dark all the time. If I knew it would be this lonely, I would have been cremated instead. All right. Don't be scared of the monsters, just look for them. Look to your left, to your right, under your bed, behind your dresser, in your closet, but never look up. She hates being seen. You okay? Okay. It's set on my shelf with thoughtless porcelain eyes and the prettiest pink doll dress I could find. Why did she have to be born still? Y'all can completely edit that one out if y'all want to. And again, my apologies for this next one. There was a picture in my phone of me sleeping. I live alone. Working the night shift alone at night, there's a face in the cellar staring at the security camera. And this is one of my favorites, this next one. They delivered the mannequins in bubble wrap from the main room. I began to hear popping. Okay. My daughter won't stop crying and screaming in the middle of the night. I visit her grave and ask her to stop, but it doesn't help. See, 2 sentences and...
Right?
Yeah. Okay, this is the last one, and I really feel bad about this. After working a hard day, I came home to see my girlfriend cradling our child. I didn't know which was more frightening, seeing my dead girlfriend and stillborn child, or knowing that someone broke into my apartment to place them there. Too far? Too far. Okay. I didn't write them.
He would read that though.
Yeah. Go to Reddit. There's a ton more. No. Okay. So for our home viewers, just so you know, every month we read a book together. And this month's selection is the classic Twilight. So here you go. Edward Cullen. Who, Mama? I can't decide whether to drink your blood or kiss you passionately. Bella Swan. That's hot. The end. All right. So let's delve into this month's list of books that are coming out. First off, a new and notable, Paddle Your Canoe, One Man's Fundamentals for Delicious Living by Nick Offerman, otherwise known as Ron Swanson. Growing a Perfect Mustache, Grilling Red Meat, Wooing a Woman. Who better to deliver his tutelage than the always charming, always manly Nick Offerman? Combining his trademark comic voice, very real expertise in woodworking. He does run his own wood shop. This book features tales from his childhood growing up in Illinois to his theater days in Chicago, his beginnings as a carpenter/actor, and the hilarious and magnificent seduction of his now wife, Megan Mullally. If you're expecting a lot of stuff on Parks and Rec, then you will be disappointed because this is mainly about him. Secondly, Bellman in Black, a ghost story by Diane Setterfield. She had a huge hit novel a few years back called The 13th Tale. This is her follow-up to that. Caught up in a moment of boyhood competition, William Bellman recklessly aims his slingshot at a bird resting on a branch, killing the bird instantly. It's a small but cruel act and is soon forgotten. By the time he is grown, with a wife and children of his own, William seems to have put the whole incident behind him. It was as if he never killed the bird at all. But rooks, the bird he killed, don't forget. Years later, a stranger mysteriously enters William's life. His fortunes begin to turn, and all of the terrible and unforeseen consequences of his past indiscretions begin to take root. And in a desperate bid to save the only precious thing he has left, he enters into a strange bargain with an even stranger partner. And apparently this is some sort of ghost story. The All-Girl Filling Station's Last Reunion by Fannie Flagg. Any of y'all ever read her Fried Green Cucumbers or whatever that was? Okay. Mrs. Suki Poole of Point Clear, Alabama, has just married off the last of her daughters, looking forward to relaxing and perhaps traveling with her husband, Earl. The only thing left to contend with is her mother, the formidable Lenore Simmons Crackenberry. Lenore may be a lot of fun for other people, but is for the most part an overbearing presence on her daughter. Then one day, quite by accident, Suki discovers a secret about her mother's past that knocks her for a loop and suddenly calls into question everything that she has ever knew about herself, her past, her family, her future. And so she begins to search for answers that take her to California, to the Midwest, back in time to the 1940s, when an impressionable woman named Fritzy takes on the job of running her family's filling station. And soon truck drivers are changing their routes to fill up at the all-girl filling station. And this is that story. Next, The First Phone Call from Heaven by Mitch Albom. This tells the story of a small town on Lake Michigan that gets worldwide attention when its citizens start receiving phone calls from the afterlife. Is it the greatest miracle ever or a massive hoax? Sully Harding, who is a grief-stricken single father, is determined to find out. So if you like Mitch Albom, then this is more of the same. Anita Shreve has a new one out called Stella Bain. When an American woman, Stella Bain, is found suffering from severe shell shock in an exclusive garden in London, Surgeon August Bridge and his wife selflessly agree to take her in. And a gesture of goodwill turns into something more as Bridge quickly develops a clinical interest in his house guest. Stella has been working as a nurse's aide at the front during World War I, but she can't remember anything prior to 4 months earlier when she was found wounded on a French battlefield. So, for you historical novel people, there's this one. Or you could try Healed by Nicola Griffith. In 7th century Britain, small kingdoms are merging frequently and violently. A new religion is coming ashore. The old gods are struggling. Their priests are worrying. Hild is the king's youngest niece, and she has a glimmering mind and a natural noble authority. She will become a fascinating woman and one of the most pivotal figures of the Middle Ages, Saint Hilda of Whitby. And this is her story, so to speak. Another new one coming out is The Black Ace by G.B. Joyce. This is a Brad Shade thriller. This is a sports thriller for all you sports-minded folks. Thanks to his work at the NHL draft last season, that's the National Hockey League, he gets to hold on to his job as a scout for LA, at least for now. But a journeyman's work is never done. He's checking out small-town talent with his old friend and teammate, Chief. But when they learn of the suicide of an old teammate from their playing days in LA, they need to go and find out just what happened. Yeah. Moving on. One of the books that I actually did read this month coming out as well is A Permanent Member of the Family by Russell Banks. He wrote a great novel quite some time ago called The Sweet Hereafter. Very, very well regarded novelist. He has been called the most compassionate fiction writer working today. The New York Times calls him a novelist who delivers wrenching panoramic visions of American moral life. And this is a collection of short stories that are heartbreaking, wrenching. The title story, a father looks back on the legend of a cherished family dog whose divided loyalties very closely mirrors the fragmenting of his marriage. There's one in which a young man entertains dark thoughts as he watches his newly remarried ex-wife leading the life that he imagined that they would once have. Very, very heartbreaking, heavy type short stories, but fantastic. Moving into the heavy buzz category, Amy Tan has her first novel in 8 years coming out this month. And this spans more than 40 years and 2 continents. And it resurrects pivotal episodes in history from the collapse of China's last imperial dynasty to the rise of the Republic, the explosive growth of lucrative foreign trade, anti-foreign sentiment. So if you like Amy Tan, a lot of great buzz about this one as well. Another one that is getting a lot of buzz is the latest from Joshua Jackson's Someone Else's Love Story. Shandy Pierce is juggling finishing college, raising her delightful 3-year-old genius son, Nathan, keeping the peace between her eternally warring, long-divorced parents. She's got enough complications in her life without getting caught in the middle of a stick-up and falling in love with William Ashe, who willingly steps between the robber and her son. But she doesn't know that her blonde god, Thor, has his own complications. And if you read Joshua and Jackson, you know it's going to have that trademark down south humor. My wife read it. You loved it, didn't you? Mm-hmm. Okay, so Gods in Alabama is still a great read if nobody's ever read that one. I would recommend it. Another one that is getting a lot of buzz this month is Anything That Moves, Renegade Chefs, Fearless Eaters in the Making of a New American Food Culture. And part of the buzz coming out about this one is that it's the best food-oriented book of the year, for whatever that's worth. And apparently this book informs us that a new American cuisine is forming. Animals never before considered or long since forgotten are emerging as delicacies. Parts that used to be used for scraps are now centerpieces. Ash and hay are now fashionable ingredients. And you pay handsomely to breathe flavored air. Going out to a nice dinner now often precipitates a confrontation with a fundamental question: is that food? This is a universe that the author explores, populated by insect eaters and blood drinkers, avant-garde chefs who make food out of roadside leaves and woods, and others who serve endangered species and Schedule I drugs. Food that is on the fringe of the modern American meal, but to judge from history, it won't be long before it reaches the family table. This is one of Amazon's best books of the month as well. Johnny Cash, The Life by Robert Hilburn. Robert Hilburn is a longtime music critic for the Los Angeles Times. And he was with Johnny Cash for many, many years. He was the only music journalist at the legendary Folsom Prison concert in 1968. He interviewed Johnny Cash and his wife June Carter for the final time just months before their death in 2003. And this is a look that shows the remarkable highs and lows of a man of great faith and humbling addiction, and one hit after another on the jukebox. Red Sky and Morning by Paul Lynch is a debut that is getting quite a bit of talk. It's 1832. Call Coyle has killed the wrong man. The dead man's father is an expert tracker and ruthless killer with a single-minded focus on vengeance. The hunt leads from the windswept bogs of County Donegal across the Atlantic to the choleric work camps of the Pennsylvania Railroad, where both men will find their fates in the hardship and rough country of the fledgling United States. This is a love story. It's getting a lot of play. And this is a debut as well. This is not on my to-read list, but that does not mean it should not be on yours. Rebecca Walker, the author, turns her attention to the power of love and the limitations of the human heart. When Farida, a sophisticated college student, falls in love with, is that Ade? Ade? Are you?
I knew that you weren't saying the title because you didn't know how to pronounce it.
That's I don't want to look like an idiot. You know, Ade. Okay. A young Swahili man living on an idyllic island off the coast of Kenya. The two plan to marry and envision a simple life together, as you do before you say I do, free of worldly possessions and concerns in their case. But when Farida contracts malaria and finds herself caught in the middle of a civil war, reality crashes in around them. The lover's solitude is interrupted by a world in the throes of massive upheaval that threatens to tear them apart along with all they cherish. So, sounds good, right? Are you tearing up now? Yeah. Okay. All right. And in our most brazen display of authorial hubris this month is Havisham by Ronald Frame. This is the astonishing prequel to Charles Dickens' Great Expectations. Before she became the immortal and haunting Miss Havisham of Great Expectations, she was Catherine, a young woman with all of her dreams ahead of her. Spry, imperious, she is the daughter of a wealthy brewer. But she is never far from the smell of hops and the arresting letters of the brewhouse wall, Havisham, a reminder of all she owes to the family name and the family business. She is sent by her father to stay with the Chadwicks, and she discovers elegant pastimes to remove the taint of her family's new money. But Catherine is anything but worldly, and when a charismatic stranger pays her attention, everything, her heart, her future, the very Havisham name is vulnerable. So if you ever wanted to know Mrs. Havisham's story before Great Expectations, then by all means.
Does she turn crazy in this?
In this one,
Does she go, become the mad
Doesn't she like get like stood up or something in Great Expectations? Isn't that?
Oh, who cares?
Or yeah.
She has the wedding cake and everything.
That's what makes her nutty. Okay.
So maybe she turns nutty at the end of this one.
This is before she goes home.
Pip, you remember that? Okay, you're exactly right. Death of the Black-Haired Girl by Robert Stone. In an elite college in a once decaying New England city, Stephen Brookman has come to a decision. He is a brilliant but careless professor. And he is determined that for the sake of his marriage and his soul, he must extricate himself from his relationship with Maud Stack, his electrifying student, whose papers are always late and too long, yet incandescent. But Maud is a young woman whose passions are not easily contained or curtailed, and their union will quickly yield tragic and far-reaching consequences. This is a complex moral universe where nothing is black and white, even if the characters wish it were. Another book that is getting a lot of buzz this month is The Isle of Youth, a collection of stories by Laura Vandenberg. And I know many of you don't read short stories, but this really is a great time in history or whatever for short stories. There's a lot of good stuff out there. This apparently is another one that deserves a look. And in this one, it explores the lives of women who are mired in secrecy and deception. From a newlywed caught in an inscrutable marriage, to private eyes working a baffling case in South Florida, to a teenager who assists her magician mother and steals from the audience. These characters are vulnerable, dangerous, and will do whatever it takes to survive. Another one that's getting a lot of press this month is one called Hill William, and I really don't know a whole lot about what it entails. Apparently it follows this Hill William as he experiences the world around him, but he never really ventures further than a mile away from his home in West Virginia. But it's supposed to be compelling, humorous, a hymn to adventure. So give it a look. This is Between Us by Kevin Sampsell. Chronicles 5 years of a troubled romance. And it offers an intimate view of one couple's struggle from the illicit beginnings of sexual obsession to the fragile architecture of a pieced-together family. It's apparently full of sweet moments, emotional time bombs, unexpected humor, and blunt sexuality following the daily life of a man and woman, both recently divorced with children and baggage in tow. This is a debut novel. And finally, The Laughter of Strangers by Michael Sedlinger. This is very fascinating to me. The description doesn't give you a whole lot of information, but basically this is about a boxer. This is a boxing novel that appeals to people who don't care anything in the world about boxing. Sugar William Flores is aging. He is on the decline. And basically what he is doing throughout the book is he is fighting other versions of himself. And they are fighting to define who he is for the world. And there are lines like, introducing first, fighting out of the blue corner, wearing solid black trucks with red trim, Executioner William Flores. And in the red corner, wearing the gold trucks with white trim, Sugar William Flores. This guy is reaching the end of his career. He does desperate and strange things to stay on top, but things get really weird when his basement fills with various versions of himself, and he somehow writes his trainer out of existence only to have his trainer reappear, coaching a totally new version of himself. And so basically this is a boxer fighting himself. People are loving it. Okay. Now, here's the deal. You know how every single month I do this, my must-read list. And I got hung up on the word list, especially when this month's got longer and longer. So I said, forget it. We're not going to do the must read anymore because I'm probably not going to read all of these. But this is on my to be read shelf, ones I would like. So I thought, well, I'll just do my top 10. So I put it together, and then when I'm done, I realized, oh man, that's 11. So it's not my top 10 picks, it's my top 11, but you get the idea. These are the ones that in a perfect world, if I had an infinite amount of time based upon the books coming out this month, I would read at this point in time. Now, as you know, that's fluid, it changes. So, as other reviews come out and I look at it with time and distance and realize, oh, I don't really want to read that after all. But right now, as it stands, these are the ones that I'm most excited about. That make sense? Okay.
You can just call it top picks and then not have to count.
Well, yeah. Well, originally my thought was I'll rank them, 10 to 1. And I thought, I'm not doing that. Maybe next month. Yeah. So we'll see. But next month, there'll be no way I can come up with a top 10 because, there's barely 15 noteworthy books that come out in December. So, anyway. Dogfight, How Apple and Google Went to War and Started a Revolution. And a lot of my emphasis this month is on nonfiction. And that's for two main reasons. Looking at my list of what I've read so far this year, I'm a little slack on nonfiction reads that really appealed to me. And secondly, November is the nonfiction month, so to speak. Dogfight, How Apple and Google Went to War and Started a Revolution. The rise of smartphones and tablets has altered the business of making computers. At the center of this change are these two companies whose philosophies, leaders, commercial acumen have steamrolled the competition. In the age of Android and the iPad, these corporations are locked into a feud that play out not just in the marketplace, but in the courts and on screens around the world. Fred Vogelstein has reported on this rivalry for more than a decade. He has rare access to the major players. And in this book, he takes us into the offices and into the boardrooms where company dogma translates into very ruthless, cutthroat business. And he focuses on outsized personalities like Steve Jobs, who is now the lionized former CEO of Apple, Eric Schmidt, Google's executive chairman. And he looks behind the scenes at how they poach each other's employees, they bid up the price of each other's acquisitions for spite, they forge alliances with major players like Microsoft and Facebook in pursuit of market dominance. So if you're into that sort of behind the scenes, big boy machinations type stuff, then you should read it too. One novel that looks fascinating this month is called Rustication by Charles Palliser. It is set in 1863 in the winter, and Richard Shenstone is 17 years old, and he has been sent down, or rusticated, from Cambridge under a cloud of suspicion. He's addicted to opium, he's tormented by sexual desire, and he finds temporary refuge in this dilapidated old mansion on the southern English coast that is inhabited by his newly impoverished mother and his sister Effie. And soon, very graphic and threatening letters began to circulate among his neighbors. And Richard finds himself the leading suspect in a series of crimes and misdemeanors ranging from vivisection to murder. So if you're into Victorian Gothic, then this is for you. Probably the most anticipated book this month is The Bully Pulpit by Doris Kearns Goodwood. Theodore Roosevelt, William Howard Taft in the golden age of journalism. This story is told through the intense friendship of Theodore Roosevelt and William Howard Taft, a very close relationship that strengthens both men before it ruptured dramatically in 1912 when they engaged in a brutal fight for the presidential nomination that divided their wives, their children, their closest friends, and crippled the progressive wing of the Republican Party and propelled Woodrow Wilson to be elected and changed the country's history. And at the same time, it's the story of the muckraking press, which arouses a spirit of reform that helps Roosevelt push the government to shed their laissez-faire attitude toward robber barons, corrupt politicians, corporate exploiters of our natural resources. So if you read Team of Rivals or any of her other work, you know it's going to be very densely researched, very well written, and this clocks in at about 950 pages. So this is not light beach reading. So. Monsters, the 1985 Chicago Bears and the Wild Heart of Football. Now, part of the buzz about this book is that it is perfect for those who don't really care about football in the first place. That it is one of the single best sports books ever written. It is Amazon's best book of the month. It is across the board starred reviews. And it is a look at the very bizarre characters that made this team. On offense, there was high-stepping running back Walter Payton. There was the punky quarterback Jim McMahon that Mike Ditka, the head coach, couldn't stand most of the time. They had a revolutionary defense. They did the Super Bowl shuffle. They decimated every single team on their way to the Super Bowl. So this is a look behind the scenes where he tracked down those players. And another interesting one, Furious Cool, Richard Pryor and the World That Made Him by David Henry and Joe Henry. Richard Pryor was born in Peoria, Illinois, and he spent his childhood just trying to survive. But the culture into which he was born, his mother was a prostitute. His grandmother ran the brothel in which his mother worked. That kind of background helped him evolve into one of the most innovative and outspoken performers ever. A man who attracted admiration and anger in equal parts. There's a great background video here that we'll try to make work. Hopefully that will.
When we were 12 and 14 years old, there was nobody cooler than Richard Pryor. We were old enough to remember seeing him early on at Sullivan and afternoon talk shows. Really, the revelation of Richard Pryor came when we heard his LPs. And that was the thunderclap for us, hearing him uncensored.
And even seeing him on the Midnight Special, 72, 73, even when he was cleaning it up for television, what he was saying was wildly subversive.
Richard Pryor is the freest black man America's ever had. He's not just a genius, he exercises parrhesia. He exercises the most plain, frank, honest, unintimidated speech we had in the 60s, even more than Martin and Malcolm.
One reason we wanted to write this book is because now he's mostly celebrated for the work he did after he lost his passion for it.
It's shocking the people who even love Richard really dearly as an icon, as an entertainer. The material that they reference is nowhere near his greatest work. I mean, he left so much of that behind him by the time he reached superstar mainstream status, and we felt sort of obliged to document what was revolutionary about what he was doing. If you came to him in the mid-'80s and didn't bother to go back, you couldn't possibly understand his significance and how much he's influenced everybody. His lens was so keen and so sharp that he could see into his own heart as quickly as he could see into anybody else's.
I think of the line from Henry James that he was one of those artists on whom nothing was lost.
Just strange that he wasn't able to take that clarity of vision and apply it to himself in real life and in real time.
If you were a Richard Pryor fan, then this would be a great look. One of my favorite memories was sneaking downstairs to turn on HBO to watch his live concert because my parents wouldn't let me watch it, so I had to sneak it. And man, that was, I was 9 or 10 years old at the time. Don't do stuff like that. Okay, Hatching Twitter: A True Story of Money, Power, Friendship, and Betrayal. And here's an excerpt from the book. Ev told Jack he had to chill out with the deluge of media he was doing. It's bad for the company, Ev said. It's sending the wrong message. Biz sat between them, watching like a spectator at a tennis match. But I invented Twitter, Jack said. No, you didn't invent Twitter, Ev replied. I didn't invent Twitter either, neither did Biz. People don't invent things on the internet. They simply expand on an idea that already exists. This story really begins in 2005. Odeo was a struggling podcasting startup founded by free-range hacker Noah Glass and staffed by a motley crew of anarchists. Less than 2 years later, its days were numbered and half the staff had been let go. But out of the ashes of Odeo, the remaining employees worked on a little side venture they had. That by 2013 had become an $11.5 billion business. That much is widely known, but the full story of Twitter's hatching has never been told before. It's a drama of betrayed friendships, high-stakes power struggles, as the founders went from everyday engineers to wealthy celebrities featured on magazine covers, The Oprah Show, Daily Show, Times list of the world's most influential people. This is a behind-the-scenes look at the creators of Twitter that featured Ev, who was the ambitious farm boy from Nebraska who had already created Blogger and sold it to Google for millions. He is a shrewd businessman who made tough choices in the interest of his companies, firing co-founders and employees who were once friends. There's Jack, the tattooed nobody who helped mastermind the original concept of Twitter, who became a billionaire tech titan and convinced the media that he was the next Steve Jobs. Then there was Biz Stone, probably the name you most hear attached to Twitter. He was the joker, the diplomat who played nice with everyone, and as drama ensued, he was the only founder who remained on good terms with his friends and to this day has no enduring resentments to anybody. And as it grew, it got more powerful by the day. Ultimately, none of them today are the CEO. They all lost their grip on it. And it is one of, if not the most influential website in the world, notable such as the Pope, Oprah Winfrey, the President, our regular Twitter users. A 17-year-old with a mobile phone can now reach a larger audience than the reporters on CNN. And this is a behind-the-scenes look. One I'm really excited about, Hyperbole and a Half. Unfortunate Situations, Flawed Coping Mechanisms, Mayhem, and Other Things That Happen by Ali Brosh. Do any of y'all read her website at all? No?
I've seen the post, so go to the website.
Okay. Great stuff. This is a full-color, beautifully illustrated edition. Features 50% new content based upon her blog. Here's a little video dramatization of one of her blog posts for you. That will, How a Fish Almost Destroyed My Childhood. Okay. That's what you can expect. And really, the reviews for this are outstanding. It's Amazon's debut of the month. It made Flavor Wire's list. And our website's hilarious. It really is. Double Down, Game Change 2012. This actually came out today, so you might have heard a lot of talk about it by Mark Halperin and John Howman. They released Game Change back in 2009, which was a look at the 2008 presidential election. This is their follow-up that looks into the 2012 election. They render an equally compelling narrative about the circus-like Republican nomination fight, the rise and fall of Mitt Romney, and the trials, tribulations, and election day triumph of Barack Obama. There's a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff you may have heard today. Stuff came out about how seriously Obama had considered dumping Biden in favor of Hillary Clinton, how the circus-like atmosphere about potentially tapping Chris Christie as Romney's running mate was leaked, and it hacked Christie off quite greatly. A lot of that kind of never before released information will be here. And the first one, Game Change, was a fantastic read, and this promises to be the same. And then A Reader's Book of Days by Tom Nisley. This is a love letter to literature and a charming guide to the books most worth reading. It features bite-sized accounts of events in the lives of great authors for every day of the year. There's Proust starting In Search of Lost Time, Virginia Woolf scribbling in the margin of her own writing. Is it nonsense or is it brilliance? There are fictional events that take place within beloved books that are also included: the birth of Harry Potter's enemy Draco Malfoy, the blood-soaked prom in Stephen King's Carrie. It is filled with tales from the lives and works of Martin Amis, Jane Austen, James Baldwin, Roberto Bolaño, the Bronte sisters, Junot Diaz, Philip K. Dick, Charles Dickens, Joan Didion, F. Scott Fitzgerald, Hilary Mantel, George Plimpton, Susan Sontag, Leo Tolstoy, David Foster Wallace, and a whole bunch more. It also notes the days on which each author was born and died. It includes lists of recommended readings for every month of the year, as well as snippets from book reviews as they appeared across literary history, and it's illustrated as well. A Prayer Journal by Flannery O'Connor. Part of the buzz about this one is you don't have to be religious at all to be fascinated by her early writings. They recently discovered Flannery O'Connor's prayer journal that she wrote between 1946 and 1947 when she was a college student in Iowa, at the University of Iowa, away from home for the first time. And it is a very rare portal into the interior life of an author, one of the greatest writers in American history. And if you've read Flannery O'Connor, you know that her writings wrestle greatly with notions of the divine and the almighty. And apparently this plays itself out throughout this prayer journal. And then finally, one I'm excited about, your number 11 in my top 10 picks, is Pulp Fiction, the complete story of Quentin Tarantino's masterpiece. When it was released in 1994, it was immediately hailed as a masterpiece. The New York Times called it a triumphant, cleverly disorienting journey. 31-year-old Quentin Tarantino, with just 3 feature films to his name, became a sensation, the next great American director. And this book, film expert Jason Bailey explores why it is such a brilliant and influential film. He discusses how the movie was revolutionary in its use of dialogue, time structure, cinematography, and looks at the characters. Y'all have seen Pulp Fiction, correct? No? Okay. Okay, that's the list. And a look ahead next month, you get my 20 favorite books of 2013. I know this is what you've been waiting all year for. So that will be next month. And I'm frantically reading, trying to get in those books that I want to consider.